Coming up next, it was a chilling 911 call. Shannon Gilbert reportedly claiming they're trying to kill me. How the search for her revealed the possible burial grounds of a serial killer. Then, could your phone save lives?
This is one of those ways where you can locate and see your loved ones.
The cutting-edge apps that protect you and your family.
You can do these check-ins when they arrive at different places, so you know that they actually made it there.
Coming up next. I became a doctor to help people heal. Now I'm using the same science and medicine to take on true crime. It's straight out of a horror film. The deep quiet of an early morning in an idyllic beachside community was suddenly shattered by piercing screams. Shannon Gilbert reportedly ran through the small community of Oak Beach, Long Island, as she pounded on neighbors' doors and made a panicked call to 911, claiming that they're trying to kill me. It was the last time anyone heard from her. But the search for Shannon revealed what police now believe could be the burial grounds of a serial killer. It's the largest murder investigation in Long Island's history, and it's been cold for almost a decade. But recently, critical new information was released in the grisly killings of multiple young escorts. In May, authorities were able to identify another alleged Jane Doe victim of the elusive serial killer through new DNA testing techniques. Police released photos last January of a belt found on one of the crime scenes with the initials WH or HM, which may have been handled by the killer. It all started when 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert vanished after visiting a client in the gated community of Oak Beach on May 1st of 2010. During the search for Shannon, 4 bodies were found wrapped in burlap along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. All were Craigslist escorts in their 20s, just like Shannon, but there was no sign of her. In the months that followed Shannon's disappearance, up to 10 victims were found, their body parts strewn over a 50-mile stretch. Finally, on December 13th of 2011, Shannon's skeleton was discovered, several miles from the other human remains. After years of legal battles, police were recently ordered to turn over all of the 911 recordings linked to Shannon's disappearance to the family's lawyer, who cited them as key evidence in her case. To date, the horrific murders have never been solved. Not a single suspect has ever been charged. Despite Shannon being the impetus of the investigation into a suspected serial killer, law enforcement has resisted saying her death is related to the other victims, leaving Shannon's family fighting for answers to this day. Joining us now is Shannon Gilbert's sister, Sheree. Sheree, law enforcement did not think your sister's death was related to this killer, but you think it's possible. Why is that?
I think it's a possibility just because she was found there, and that's a coincidence. She was considered, an escort along with the other women that were found there, and she was meeting a John that night. So there's a lot of coincidences to me that would make me think that she was definitely a victim of the Long Island serial killer.
Why do you feel law enforcement are still reluctant to consider and connect your sister's death to the other victims?
I think they're reluctant because I think it's going to show that they really failed my sister and they really screwed up the investigation from the beginning.
What specifically was bothering you about how they managed it?
The fact that my sister made a 23-minute 911 call, running through the community, knocking on doors, screaming in fear for her life. And I just think if she was just maybe a lawyer or a lawyer's daughter or a doctor or somebody else, I think that they would have taken that more serious. But I felt like she was being ignored from the very beginning because of what she was doing.
You went to extraordinary steps. You had another review of the autopsy with Dr. Bodden.
Yes. We had another autopsy conducted by Dr. Biden because we didn't feel that the Suffolk County Medical Examiner's Office was being very truthful in the autopsy that they had conducted of my sister. I think that they were missing critical information And they were just so quick to rule her death, accidental from the very beginning. So I think that we definitely needed answers, and Dr. Biden was willing to do that. So we went to him for the answers.
So the investigation into the Gilgo Beach murders began with Shannon. And so,
Yeah.
It's hard for you as a family, I would gather, please continue to discover more and more victims that were not Shannon. What was that like?
It was heartbreaking. We got a phone call from one of the detectives who told us, my mom and myself, that they were 99% sure the first victim that they found was Shannon. And we knew immediately whether or not that was going to be my sister because of the metal plate in her jaw. So we knew whether or not that was going to be her. So it just kind of felt like they were telling us these things, and it was kind of like pulling at our heartstrings. It was very emotional for us. It was very traumatic.
And that wasn't your sister, so...
It wasn't my sister, no.
How did it feel after your sister was finally found?
I mean, it felt like there was relief, but there was also sadness because it was the end for us. It was the end of a long search to find her. We knew it was going to either end up that she was found by some miracle alive, or she was going to be found deceased. But we wanted the opportunity, if she wasn't going to be found alive, to at least be able to bring her home and bury her.
So, Sheree, it's been 10 years since the first bodies were found near Gilgo Beach. Do you have a message for whoever is responsible for this?
A lot of lives have been lost. A lot of families have been broken from this. Just turn yourself in. Just do the right thing. Give us the closure that we really deserve, and don't hurt anybody else. That's just all I really want. We all just want justice for our loved ones.
Yeah, I'm worried people are still being hurt. That's the natural history of people
Exactly.
like this. Thank you for joining me. Up next, the Gilbert.
Thank you for having me.
The Gilbert family attorney reveals the importance of our frantic early morning 911 call. Those details are next. We've been talking about the case of Shannon Gilbert, whose disappearance led to the discovery of the remains of at least 10 more victims around Gilgo Beach in Long Island. Law enforcement believe those 10 deaths might be the work of a serial killer. Their cases have never been solved. The Gilbert family attorney, John Ray, joins us now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
What do we know factually actually happened?
The facts we know are that Shannon went on a tryst with a John in Oak Beach, Long Island on May 1st, 2010. She went to Joe Brewer's home. He was the John. She was driven there by a man named Michael Pack and left there for several hours. She signed up for more time and left and came back. And then about 4:54 a.m., she called 911 for a 23-minute call, claiming, as we know from public revelation by the police, that they said, or that she said on the phone, they're trying to kill me. And she bolted from the home, knocked on doors, neighbors' doors, a fellow named Coletti and another person named Brennan, Mrs. Brennan, and then ran from their homes and never seen again until her bones are found in December of 2011.
And the two homes that she ran to, those folks also called 911.
Yeah, Coletti called 911, and when Brennan went to call, she looked up and Shannon was gone. So those are the facts. I mean, there are many other facts. I have the 911 tapes that the police were ordered to give me.
Let's talk about that for a second, because earlier this year, the police who had not turned over these 911 tapes were ordered to turn them over. These are the 911 calls we're talking about now, the night that Shannon disappeared, and they were given to the Gilbert family attorney. John, that's you. So I know you can't discuss the details of the tapes themselves, but you've heard these calls.
I have.
How critical are they to this case, and should they have been released earlier?
These tapes are critical to this case and very likely the other cases as well. If the public could hear them, the public would be outraged, the public would be shocked. The police have written a letter to the public, published in the newspaper, and to me personally, where they detailed what they said was on the tape. I can talk about that. When the police said, that Shannon was calm at all times, that the people around her, the men that were there, were calm at all times, that she was never about to be murdered, and that otherwise everything was peaceful. The police were willfully lying about every one of those things. They are absolutely false. And they published this. This is their template for what really happened to Shannon Gilbert that night, and none of it is true.
What would be the motivation about, for example, declaring someone as calm if these calls that you've heard reveal that she's not?
There's a narrative, a false narrative that's being spun that originated with the police, and that is that Shannon Gilbert had used drugs of some kind, was crazed, and of course went irrationally calling 911, irrationally fleeing, and irrationally managing to put herself into a marsh that's almost impossible to get into with all of the bushes that were there, and managed to somehow kill herself there. That's the narrative that's spun. It's absurd on its face when you think about it. She's found in the marsh, face up, laying on a bush. Her clothing is found about a quarter of a mile away, and the police theory was the clothing came off in the bramble bushes as she ran. I mean, you can't. I mean, I was about to say you can't make it up. Well, they did make it up. And that's how Shannon was found. She was a sex worker found in the same area, in the same kind of marsh, in the same place in Long Island, where there are 9 other sex workers found, all dead, and all of them murdered. And yet the police are saying this is a mere coincidence, and Shannon Gilbert died of natural causes. That's absurd. And there's not a scintilla of evidence that she died of natural causes. Not one.
So in May, police unexpectedly revealed they had identified one victim. Jane Doe number 6 was her original name, but she's really Valerie Mack. They used genealogy techniques, the genetic techniques we've talked about in this show frequently. We're actually working with the same people we've had on this show. How hopeful are you, John, that these techniques are going to be valuable in providing additional answers in this case?
I have very little hope that these techniques will be of any value after this, because the police commissioner has already announced that the DNA on the other remains of things, whatever they are that they have, has been deteriorated, has declined. And they were able to identify one person, but they show you a belt or the initials on a belt. Can
I just show the belt for everybody?
Yeah, sure.
So this is the actual little bit of information that's been released from the police. These are there's a belt with embossed letters on it. It's either HM or WH. You see them there, right? And they may have been handled by the killer, according to the police. How groundbreaking is that?
It wasn't groundbreaking at all. It was a pap that was thrown to the public by the police department. And I say that because when they showed the initials, they never showed the belt. They never described the belt. They wouldn't tell us whether it was a male or a female belt, whether it was upside down or right side up. And when, most belts are made for right-handers, so you can kind of figure that out. We don't know the size of the items themselves, and they never produced the belt. So I have a real suspicion that they don't have it anymore. And they have only photographs, which is what they released. If they do have it, they haven't been able to produce any DNA testing on it after all these years. They've had it for 9 years. And now they suddenly reveal it. The rigidity of the police department in refusing to cooperate with the public and to get to the heart of the case when they have found nobody. They have no suspects. And they are now, as we speak, resisting my attempt to take those 911 calls and reveal those calls to the public. Because as the commissioner herself said, the police commissioner, the public is the best source of information. So I have the tapes. I want to release them. There's a court order that I can't. I've asked the court to relieve me of that restriction. And the police department, as we speak, the same police department that says we're going to the public with these initials on a belt, refuse to allow the tapes to be released.
We reached out to the Suffolk County Police Department for comment on these allegations, but did not hear back in time for this taping. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on new videos to live the good life.